Physical strength is no substitute for perception. For perception is the key which unlocks the intangible power of the spirit. You perceive nothing.
From the Buckeye City to the City of Roses, this is TrueRants Network. Piloting your vessel of knowledge, I am Roshan Turner with your co-pilot, JL Vance. JL,
good to be back.
Last episode, we promised we were going to get into some Nsa Spying. We didn't quite make it, so why don't we go ahead and start the episode off talking a little bit about that. As we know, there's been a lot lately in the media about the NSA, and there's been a lot about, I guess, cell phone spying, recordings. You want to take that?
Indeed. I mean, it's really been sort of the summer of the NSA. We're in fall now, but it's almost too much to cover. I mean, we could dedicate like a 3-hour podcast to this. I mean, it's endless. It's an endless rabbit hole of craziness. I mean, this initially came out, and of course this was predated by things like the WikiLeaks revelations and the Bradley Manning leaks of a few years back, which are an ongoing issue in and of themselves. But this has really come to a head, and I think it's really exposed our intelligence apparatus in a way that it's never been exposed before. I mean, a lot of people probably didn't even know what the NSA was before this. I mean, it was once regarded as jokingly as no such agency because it was that secretive. When in reality, it's from what I've heard, it's like almost 10 times the size of the CIA, which is of course the agency you always hear about. So this is a huge, huge apparatus, and it's crazy. But yeah, we're continuing on a theme from last episode, where we're getting into the issue of if the government is losing credibility. And I think this NSA thing, I mean, if anything is going to erode the credibility of the government in the eyes of the populace, it's got to be widespread, pervasive surveillance of everyone's phone calls. And it's this concept that they are calling sort of euphemistically metadata, which essentially just means that they're constantly surveilling everyone and pretty much all your electronic transmissions, whether it be phone calls, emails, any blueprint you have out there. This is a huge violation of the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. There's nothing different about electronic transmissions that shouldn't be protected by the Fourth Amendment. It's just as legitimate as carrier pigeons or whatever. The most recent revelation is that they're hacking smartphones. They have the ability, they have essentially access to everybody's iPhone or whatever. I mean, this is just endless. And I mean, if you want to pick up on, we were just talking about the Utah facility, which I think is kind of an underreported thing. The thing about the Utah facility, which is being built right now to house all kinds of data, is it came out a few years ago, but I haven't heard a lot about it in light of the new revelations. You want to hit on that?
So the Utah facility, it's outside of Salt Lake City. They got a National Army Guard base out there. They've been building this thing for over 2 years. It's about a $1.7 billion facility. Actually opens in October, according to the latest information we have on it. It uses 65 megawatts of power to run this thing. I mean, it's an incredible amount of power. Over 200 technicians are reported to be hired there within the next month here to run the facility. Basically, it's gonna house data, Google searches, emails, phone calls. Now the NSA is being very vague about the actual uses of it. Their official statement is that it's going to help thwart terrorism and to help, secure our country. Some people are afraid that it might actually be a facility they're going to use against us. I can't speak on that at this point, but it is kind of intriguing to me that they're going to build such a large facility. I mean, 1 trillion terabytes. Is essentially what I'm seeing here as to the capacity of it. Apparently, they're going to be building another one in Baltimore. But just overall, it just seems like it's creepy to me. I don't really know why we need such a heavily secure building like this.
Yeah, and it does seem like something that's, it came out a few years ago, and I think it's kind of underreported in light of everything else that's going on. And I'm honestly not surprised, and I think it's pretty safe to assume what this is being used for. I mean, in light of everything that we've learned about what the government is doing, eavesdropping on every electronic transmission, this is like the physical palace, fortress, basically, where they're physically putting all this into supercomputers. I mean, it goes hand in hand. So the idea that they're saying it has nothing to do with their illegal surveillance, and there aren't enough terrorists in the galaxy to justify this kind of apparatus. And they're storing it in they don't even have a legitimate word for how big this is. I mean, they're storing it in Yoda bytes.
Right.
Yoda bytes, which sounds like
I've never heard of that.
Like a Star Wars themed candy or something instead of a and the palace is said to look like a jelly bean. I don't know if that's supposed to make it seem more friendly and less innocuous, or I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, like you said, they're claiming that it has nothing to do with illegal spying. Yeah, okay. And they're otherwise vague about its purpose. And it's apparently going to be a new Area 51-esque location where you will, if you step on that property, fair warning, you will probably be gunned down. That's out of The Guardian. It's insane. And
actually, it's talking about the jelly bean shape of it. There might be various reasons for why it was shaped like that. But one thing I was getting from a from a source at The Guardian was that it's built in a modular design as well, so that you can add on as needed to it. And yeah,
that makes sense. That speaks to their intentions as well. I mean, it's probably never going to be a big enough building for what they want to do. But I mean, this all ties in with what I wanted to get into, which is most recently it's Edward Snowden, who was an NSA contractor who leaked most of what we know, and that's just one dude. I mean, who knows what we would know if more people came out? And that's what I want to do on this episode is use what little, meager voice we have to call for more whistleblowers and leakers to come forth. We've really just had him. We've had WikiLeaks releasing things. Julian Assange is basically trapped in an embassy. Edward Snowden is being treated as public enemy number one for revealing information when we're supposed to be a free country. Bradley Manning he revealed some things to WikiLeaks that were very, very damning about the true brutality of the war in Iraq and things like this, the drone strikes. I mean, he's essentially a true patriot, but in the Orwellian state that we're living in, well, they locked him up in solitary confinement. He's pretty much sentenced to life in prison. I mean, this is insanity, and we need to turn the tide and champion these guys as heroes. I don't know. What say you on that?
I mean, yeah, essentially I agree to the same, I mean, look at Snowden, I mean, and what he did, I could understand where, I don't know, in some way, coming out and saying what he did in the way he did, could have complicated national security, but then in another way, I mean, it didn't. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, we're supposed to be, this society, with no, this transparent society where, it's not. And it's just, I mean, it should just prove how, how our government works and what it has become, over time. Essentially maybe it didn't start out this way, but this is how we have allowed it to manifest into this, to where just simply telling the truth gets you on a death list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
no protection. No protection.
I could, on that note, I could drop a Ron Paul quote, which is, truth is treason in the empire of lies. And I think that kind of sums it up. I mean, that's increasingly the Orwellian state that we're living in. And I think, governments are always going to put a premium on secrecy. They're business, they're in the business of killing people, and governments need secrecy. If you knew the truth about what they were doing, there would maybe be a revolution tomorrow. But, so these guys are all being pursued by the empire. in some cases it varies a little bit, but a lot of people are seeing that they're doing the right thing. Some people are just buying into the propaganda. The polls vary on this. Edward Snowden is generally regarded all right. But there are some outlets who are doing a good job of, framing him as a criminal. And I think you have to weigh the pros and cons, is what I would add to what you said. And I think an informed populace, even if it's information that could hurt some people, I mean, the pros outweigh the cons. I'm just going to say it about having an informed populace. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, to me, knowledge is power. I mean, the smarter, that your society is, the smarter everybody is on topics, the better your outcome's going to be. And I think that's the problem. I think they don't want us to have the knowledge because they don't want us to have that power, I guess.
And they're always going to cite national security. I mean, that's always going to be the case. Anytime anything is always going to be a threat to national security. So you sort of have to take that like a grain of salt, I think, because they're always going to say that shit. So
yeah, national security. I mean, yeah, national security meaning government security, but national security as in the populace security. No, it's when you hear the word national security, you should equate that to them saying security for themselves, for the government, for that entity, not for mankind, not for the populace of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about like secrecy, right now we've got the UK and the NSA essentially teaming up their intelligence operations. This is full spectrum. The UK is sort of our little buddy. They're doing a lot of the same thing. They're sharing information. They've shared information with multiple other countries. This is sort of a whole Western world full spectrum thing. And what I wanted to get at is, do Americans really care? I mean, I know if you went to the typical person and said, are you okay with every electronic transmission you have being surveilled? Most would say no, I'm not absolutely okay with that. But in the big picture, do they care enough? And, I mean, what are we going to do about it as a people? Is this just going to blow over, like I said about Syria and things like that? Are people going to sell their iPhone tomorrow because they're being surveilled? I don't think so. I think they're going to tolerate this. And I'm not saying sell your iPhone. I don't have the answer. But I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
I mean, I believe the same thing. I mean, are people going to give up what they've come to know as a normal lifestyle based on hearsay is what they're going to chalk it up as. I'm assuming, no, I don't think so. I don't think that much is going to change unless there's a drastic measure that is enacted that affects everyone's life down to, the T or whatever. I think it will take that in order for people to actually, not just a single person, but society as a whole to do something about it, to actually change the way they live,
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to this last week, but I think it's going to take something. It's probably going to take a generation or two at minimum. Like, it's going to take a different mindset and a youthful perspective at this whole thing. It's going to take a reset and like a fundamental paradigm shift. You can't take all of these people who have been propagandized from cradle to grave and expect a big revelation like this to change things. It's gonna take a more fundamental paradigm shift, like I'm saying. People need to stop expecting truth and honesty and benevolence from their government, and then none of this will be an issue because people will sort of be armored and be ready for this sort of thing.
And that's kind of what's happening now. I'd like to think that it seems like this generation, the millennial generation that's coming up now, is actually breaking new ground in this aspect and challenging a lot more things than any other generation has prior to this. And I think that's why we're seeing all of the things that we are at this point with all these events and all the things we have in the news media now, especially with this NSA stuff right here. I think people are freaking out. Governments are freaking out. Those in charge are, they're not knowing what to do because they don't know what to expect from us, where we kind of have the leading edge on that because we're unexpected. And, I think as time goes on and we get, a decade from now or whatever, and more people become enlightened into this, who knows what the generation below us is going to add to the table and so forth,
Yeah, I mean, that's my sincere hope. But I have a guarded optimism, at least for the near future.
Very guarded, yeah.
Yeah, to say the least, if not pessimistic in the sense that, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. I think economic calamity is probably going to be the surest way to wake people up. Because when you're having trouble putting food on the table, that's when things really come to a head. So I think that even more than this crazy surveillance is if there's another recession, if there's a full-blown depression, that could be the paradigm shift. But mostly it's going to be an educational. It's going to be people who are awake to this, talking to their family, talking to their friends, doing things like our podcast and just putting the word out and just, not expecting good behavior from government because I don't think you're ever going to get it. It's contrary to their nature.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just how things go. I mean, it's human nature. You're granted this authority and this power, and eventually it's overused. I mean, I think it's just something within the ego of the human, condition where we just assume that if we have power, we need to abuse it. We need to take it to its full, fledged, thing. And it's like, it's kind of what's happening. We are kind of the newest kid on the block as a country, and I think it's finally coming around to where, it's being, the powers that be are being overly expressed.
Yeah, and I mean, I could do a whole separate podcast, because the perspective I'm bringing to this is a narco-capitalist, and that's why I talk about how, I wouldn't even personally call it human nature myself, and we'll get into this in a separate episode, but it's the nature of government. It's having not just power, but a monopoly on the use of violence in the hands of one group of people that we call the government. No competition. So, but the last aspect of this NSA thing I wanted to touch on was pretty much the issue of corporate fascism, because what we have here, as far as we know, are a cabal of the biggest 9 or 10 tech companies, most or all of which are American-based, essentially colluding or at least acquiescing to this government surveillance and possibly even being a full-blown partner in it. I mean, we don't know the full extent of this, but they all seem to be complicit. Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, yada yada, all the big ones. I mean, there's no really exception. Facebook. I don't know. Do you feel betrayed as a consumer that this is happening? I obviously we feel betrayed as citizens with the government, but as a consumer with these companies, we use most of their services.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's, for most people, it's a commodity. It's starting to turn into a necessity, but I don't know. I'm a little bit different. I don't need this. I have an iPhone. I do. It's actually an iPhone 4. I'm living a little bit in the past here. I don't have the 5 or even the 4S or whatever, but I don't know. It's hard to say on that. I can't really comment much on that because I could just go off the grid and be okay, but I'm doing this, using my phone, have the computer, the internet and stuff like that, It's fun, but do I necessarily need it personally in my life? No.
Yeah, I'm much the same, and this probably speaks to the amateur nature of our podcast, which is kind of trial and error right now. But yeah, I just recently got an iPhone for the first time, also an iPhone 4. I sort of feel the same way, but I think there's a fundamental debate here. There's a divide. 2 ways you can go in response to all this tyranny. You can either sort of retreat to the woods and go off the grid, okay. But my answer to that is there's nowhere on this planet you're going to run that you're going to escape what's coming. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the American empire, even if you leave the country, there are governments everywhere, and governments are all inherently corrupt. Some maybe less so than others, but and
they're all in cahoots to some level. They're all in some kind of cahoots with each other. So
absolutely, there's definitely an emerging world order,
global force. Yeah,
and no, I think it makes more sense to use the tools that they've turned against us and try to turn it back on them. I mean, sure. This is probably being surveilled right now. At least they're not actively listening to it. I don't think I'm that important. I don't have that big of an ego or anything. But, at the very least, if I probably shouldn't even say this because this will probably cue us up. But if I fail to pay my taxes in a given year, not that I'm making anywhere near enough money that it matters, but, they suddenly start pulling up data on me. And build their case using everything that they already have. It's not like they're actively looking at this, and this is the concept getting back to the metadata. It's like they just store it. They're not maybe looking at it, but they've got it. They've got it if they want to reference it against you.
Right, yeah.
So, but just getting back to the last issue of the tech companies, these are big corporations, you know, and this is a common, and this could be a whole other podcast topic in itself. A lot of people think we still have capitalism and a free market. We really don't. I mean, this is why we have these mega corporations, right? I mean, they wouldn't really exist in a free market. Like, there would be more competition. You'd have more companies. They'd all be smaller. They'd sort of equal out, generally speaking, I think. We have these mega conglomerates because they're sort of in bed with the government, and it's an I scratch my back, you scratch yours type thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And
on the one hand, the companies are victims like anyone else. Like, they're afraid of being penalized and shut down if they don't cooperate. I get that. But, you know, the question I wanted to ask her, like, it gets back to what we were already talking about, but the beauty of the fact that we still have some kind of market is you can opt out and you can hit these companies where it hurts by revoking your customership, for lack of a better term. You know, you can cancel out Google. I mean, I search on Start Page. I give Google fewer hits that way. At the same time, it's like you said, they offer Apple, Google, my God, they offer services that have become entrenched in people's daily lives to an extent that I think the best way is sort of a middle-of-the-road approach where you can let your feelings be known to these companies and let them know that if this persists, then they're going to have something to worry about as far as keeping so many Americans as customers. And I think we're starting to see a response in that regard. Facebook published a government request log for the first time, like a lot of other companies have done. They're slowly coming around because at the end of the day, they do need to answer to the consumers, even these big mega corporations.
Yeah, I mean, it is just crazy how it's getting so entrenched into people, and now actually it's embedded in, you know, Google is almost embedded in everything that you have to do with the internet. I mean, you could have a separate membership to like a magazine or something, and suddenly you go to watch, you know, look at the magazine article on the site or something, and it's wanting you to log in with your Google login or your Facebook login or your Pinterest login, or I mean, there's numerous, you know, ones. It's just this social media thing is just getting so out of control, and it's trying to, you know, it's just sometimes I'm just like, you know, really? Like, I'm trying to check I'm pretty sure pretty soon I'm going to be logging into my bank account and I'm going to have to go through, you know, Twitter or something to get, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, don't give them ideas, dude.
Oh, yeah, wait.
Yeah, I mean, social media should be empowering. Instead, it's more and more about inane things, and and these big CEOs like Zuckerberg and the Google guys, and they have this whole, like, self-justification of, like, their mentality where they want everybody's details just out there, and they act like it's almost a religion for them. Like, and for them, it's about profit, they don't couch it in terms of, like, we're going to give this information to the government, but they're like, we should have an open society. You should share everything. Well, no, you know, there's certain things that should and can be private. That's perfectly legitimate. That pretty much wraps that. And we're going to kind of do a pivot here because that was sort of left over from what we couldn't hit last week. But we want to hit a recent story, which sort of percolated over the summer. I didn't see it get a huge amount of coverage, and I wanted to hit it because it really gets into the issue of economics, which I think Americans are sorely lacking knowledge of. You want to introduce this fast food issue? Basically, there's a fast food strike going on.
Yeah, you know, I ran across this in August, and apparently, like you said, it's been going on here for a few months now. But it came to my surprise looking over some a news website. Apparently, there are 5 large fast food industries that restaurants that are involved in this, where they have the employees have taken it upon themselves. They've gotten a couple unions involved in this, but basically they're attempting to petition the government and the fast food industry in itself to give higher wages for employment. That I can understand. That's great. But they have a specific number to what they are looking for as a raise, and that's $15. $15 an hour is the minimum that they're willing to take here as a raise. Now, this kind of strikes home with me because currently I'm in a position and I don't even make $15 an hour, but I can guarantee you that my responsibility is tenfold to the fast food worker. And I'm going to say this from experience because I was a fast food worker. My first job, I worked at McDonald's. Second job, worked at Wendy's. I mean, I've been there. I've done that. And I think, you've had experience in the fast food industry too, Joe?
I have indeed. My first job was also in fast food, Taco Bell, no less. And, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, and I don't want to come off as this dickish, hardcore capitalist, but, like I said, I am an anarcho-capitalist, and, I think most Americans are lacking in a basic fundamental knowledge of economics. And this ties into the overall issue of the minimum wage. And I think if you queried most Americans, they would at least have a tepid support for higher minimum wages. It just makes sense on a intuitive level. But when you get to the science of it, and economics, despite being kind of a social science, is pretty much a hard science, I think. I mean, all you have to do is take Econ 101 at even the most establishment college, and they admit in like chapter 1 pretty much that a minimum wage just leads to a surplus of labor, meaning there are just going to be fewer jobs at that higher wage. I mean, this is just basic stuff. So when you want to raise that minimum wage even artificially higher and higher, you're just making it worse. I mean, people are going to flock to these fast food jobs because of this inflated artificial wage if they actually got what they wanted.
Yeah, it's not even that. Look at the end result here. Let's say that you get 50, I'm not saying that these people don't work hard. I mean, it gets busy. They have to deal with a lot of customers that come in and looking for certain orders or whatever. I'm sure it gets confusing. I know it did when I was there, and you do sweat. It's a fast-paced job. So yeah, but let's say your raise is $15 an hour. Okay, somewhere along the line, the end user is going to have to take on that burden of that increased wage. We're already paying like $8 an hour, $8 for a combo meal at most of these establishments. I mean, it's going to increase that price. I mean, you're going to be going and paying, $10, $11 for a combo meal. And it's going to come to the point where you could go to Applebee's and pay less than at McDonald's or Arby's or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think that's a great point that, and this is the case with any tax, any regulation, any increased wages. I mean, these things are always built into the price. The consumer is the one saddled with the results of that. And yeah, but I would just go ahead and put a plug out if I can for a pretty short book that I think like most Americans need to read, and it's called Economics in One Lesson. It's by Henry Hazlitt. And basically what we've seen over the course of like the last 100 years is like in the tank government, pro-government people are essentially flocked to the academia and economics. So even people with like PhDs in economics are like spreading really false shit. And like the average American has like no idea. I mean, they just don't understand how the science of economic works. And like, essentially to get back to the wage issue, this takes care of itself with the market, if the market were allowed to be free, right? These people have a certain number of skills, there's supply and demand, like the market figures this out. The market sets a wage, and it's always rational. I mean, this is how it would work, minus a command. You must pay this amount. And this gets back to like the initial conversation we were having. I would say my stance on this is, if it were just a marketplace, if you want to petition as an employee your private employer for a higher wage, that's totally legitimate. You can say, I think I deserve this wage, and this is why, and I have these skills, and see if you can get it. Perfectly fine. It's not legitimate to want to use the hammer of the government, Congress or the state legislature or whatever it might be, to force your employer to pay you that. And I realize it's hard to move around with jobs, but if you're not making what you want to make, you got to move on. It's just you can't look to Congress people to run your life for you.
It's about, I know people are going to get offended from this, but it's about taking personal responsibility for yourself. I mean, if you're not happy where you're working, if you're not happy, making what you make, do whatever you can to remedy that. If that means getting another job, if that means going back to school, there are grants and loans out there. Whatever it takes, maybe work your way up to management or something. I mean, I'm afraid that sometimes there's some personal things that these individuals may be involved in or may basically the responsibility level is they're always looking for someone else to fix their problems, when sometimes it's sometimes it's me, sometimes we got to take on our own situation and try to correct our own faults. I mean, things, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would qualify this too, just to embrace their point of view a little bit. I think what we're seeing here is like an America that's in decline, and really these low-wage service jobs are increasingly becoming the norm. That's by far the most plentiful type of job. And this is no fault of regular people. This is the fault of the government. This is the fault of the Federal Reserve, the central planners who have robbed, just completely raped the manufacturing base, the economic heart of this country. And that's probably not coming back, honestly, and certainly not anytime soon. And this is the norm now. And it saddens me that they're saddled with this, but this current effort that they're launching is no solution. It's just going to take us further down a road we don't want to go down.
Yeah, and I mean, I can agree to that to some point. I mean, no, it's not their fault that, this has become the norm in the job market. And like I said, not even that job. There's a lot of other jobs. EMT, an emergency medical technician, they make typically across the United States $11 or $12 an hour for what they do. And they're in charge of people's lives. I mean, their job is to try to make somebody, better. I mean, CPR. I mean, there's so many things that they do on a daily basis, and they make $12, $13 an hour. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, some of them. If you're an EMTP, which is a paramedic, you can make more than that if you're attached to a city or government. But there's a lot of privatized ambulance services out here, and they're not making that much. And I mean, there's a lot of other jobs where, yeah, they should be making more, but they don't. And that's a bigger picture here. That's a bigger project that we need to work on. But, to simply just one day up and just come up with this arbitrary number and just throw it out there and expect results. I mean, it's just crazy for me.
Yeah, and that's where it gets back to what I was saying about the marketplace. Like, if you cut taxes, you decrease regulations, you don't centrally plan, people will interact voluntarily and trade goods and services, and what you get at your job will make sense. It's because there's all of this government overlap that people are making insane amounts of money they shouldn't be making for certain jobs and not enough at other jobs. I mean, it all goes back to the state. I mean, fundamentally, it really does. I mean, yes, there's shady businesses everywhere, but like the government added into the equation just further perverts the whole transaction. And what I wanted to finally add was just like, really honestly, like, let's just not eat fast food anyway. Like, let's just put these places out of business, and the people don't have to work there. They can go work somewhere else. Like, this is disgusting poison anyway. Like,
I agree. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not even healthy for you. There's no value in the food. They're even putting out the statistics themselves. You can read on the menus now, what you're eating. I mean, you're not getting any nutritional value out of these foods.
Well, you've heard the stories about how, like, they've put, like a McDonald's burger on like a shelf and like let it sit there for years or something, and it's still, it's still intact. Like, what does that tell you about what that is? You're putting that through your digestive system? My God.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all these preservatives, all these, I'm not going to go to any one fast food restaurant, but we've heard all the stories from all the different ones, about, one restaurant, they claim to have, their roast beef was actually a liquid when when it came into the actual establishment before it was cooked. You know, you've had like burgers are actually soy. I mean, you know, there some of this stuff, there's some truth behind some of this, and it's just like, you know, at some point it's just like, why? I mean, is it really that good? I mean, is it really that delicious that, I mean, or is it just a convenience factor that draws you in, you know?
I think it's partially a convenience factor, but I mean, Americans are becoming a little more fastidious about their nutritional choices, and this has been yielded in the fact that recently McDonald's like had their profit go down for the first time like pretty much ever. I mean, this is like a shocking thing. Like, I mean, and yeah, there's a convenience factor, but there's also the fact that they literally like designed this food to be addictive. I mean, it has chemicals. I mean,
yeah.
So in a way, you can almost look at these fast food people, you know, and okay, I don't hate poor people. I am one pretty much, like, you know, like,
absolutely. Yep. Same here.
But basically, you can almost look at them as drug dealers. I mean, they're pushing something that people are addicted to. Americans are obese. They're dying. Heart disease kills way more people than anything else by a huge margin. And, you know, there's other things you can do. There really are. And even if there are other shitty low-wage jobs, they're not selling this trash to people, and people are feeding their kids this. I mean, this is, come on.
Oh yeah, that's what gets me the most, man. You know, driving down the street and I see these people bringing their 4-year-olds and their 3-year-olds into these restaurants and giving them these horrible. I mean, okay, just do this for like a week, like, or 2 weeks or so. Just don't eat anything fast food. Make all your stuff at home, eat salads, stuff like that. Then go back and try to eat a cheeseburger. You will immediately become sick. You know, I've done it. I've tried it, and it's seriously, that's legitly what, I mean, you get sick. I mean, it's not, and what's that telling you, man? You know, like, it's just, it's not good. The whole scenario here with this is not good. I mean, I feel sorry for these people that work here, and you know, I do understand where they're coming from with, they need a sustainable living, but so does everybody else. We all do. So as we were speaking before, and I keep going back to it, you know, this is a bigger problem. Let's fight the bigger problem and not something that's just not going to happen. You're not getting $15 an hour. I'm sorry. It's just, it's inconceivable for this.
Well, yeah, and even if they did, it would be a purely artificial thing, so it would just distort the marketplace and drive the price of other stuff up and just cause chaos and throw off the equilibrium. That's what I'm saying. Like, a free market sets things in a rational manner, but we don't
Absolutely.
have that.
Right.
So, and send your hate mail to...
Send it on over to me. Here's my personal email. No, I'm just kidding, but... Yeah, I mean, we do want feedback. Tell us what you're feeling. You know, we don't care. We're not just going to sit here and babble off this stuff to you and not expect any responses, man. Go ahead. Email rogueagent614@gmail.com with any of your comments. If you want us to cover anything in a later episode, or if you just want to bitch at us about our responses here. If you work at McDonald's and you have a story you want to tell about why you should get $15 an hour, hey, I want to hear it.
Totally agreed. Yeah, we'll bring you on if you're receiving this transmission and you want to plead your case for why $15 an hour, government imposed, is something you totally deserve, morally and ethically. By all means, come on and we'll debate it. And I want to hit as our final topic for this episode, a little bit of lighter philosophical fare. Roshan, you have a personal story recently that you want to relate, and this ties into the issue of religion generally, but specifically the differences or lack thereof between religion and spirituality.
Yeah, you know, I had something happen a couple weeks ago. I was at a funeral, and I had somebody that I knew came up to me. I guess she wanted to give her condolences. She came up to me and she made this statement. It got to the core of me, and I was just like, are you serious? She basically said, so hey, I wanted to pray for you and your family, but I know you're not spiritual, so I just, you know, what have you. It's just, Okay, whoa, wait. Okay, so I'm not spiritual? Like, okay, I think what she meant was she knows that I'm not religious. But see, religion and spirituality are two completely separate things. So I kind of wanted to hit upon that because I'm assuming if she has this, if she's thinking this way, that there's a lot of other people that might be thinking this way too, and maybe are confused to the different terms. So, basically, religion. Everybody knows religion. Most people have been a part of it at some point in their lives. But religion is an institution that was established by us, humans, men, women, for various reasons. A lot of times it's to exert control. Sometimes it's to instill morality into people. Sometimes it's just to stroke people's egos or, whatever. It's organized, it's structured, and it's man-made, bottom line. A lot of times it involves you have to confess your sins to a member of the church. You're told when to pray, what to pray. And basically God is a middleman. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They are a middleman to God. You must go through them to talk with your Creator. Now, spirituality is basically, it develops in a person. It incorporates all aspects of a person's life. It's a chosen. First of all, spirituality is chosen, and religion is oftentimes forced upon you. It might be by your society. It might be by your family. It might be something like that. Whereas spirituality is more of a chosen way of existence. It's basically the way that you express your love, your acceptance of people, of around you, of yourself, and why you're here, on Earth. And it's kind of like a moral code in itself that has no restrictions, no control, nobody that you have to answer to. And actually, I found, I was browsing the net here earlier today, just kind of looking at some examples of various, I guess, I don't know what you'd call them, but little descriptions of religion and spirituality, and came across a couple that I really agreed with. One of them said that religion is for those who want to continue rituals and the formality. I think that's true. Like a lot of times, there's a lot of rituals, there's a lot of formal ways to religion, whereas spirituality is basically for a person who wants to reach the spiritual ascent without dogma. It's basically a person who wants to believe what they want to believe without having any repercussions. Do you want to hit any of those other ones there?
Yeah, we kind of dug these up from the bottom of the internet, but I kind of went through them, and they make a lot of sense, and I think we can just blow through them really quick, because I think, and spirituality to me, I'll be honest, it's a vague term, but I think a lot of these make sense in the difference, and the idea that you, just because you're an atheist or agnostic or a skeptic means that you lack spiritual values is insane. So we can kind of alternate through some of these, but I think I would basically call them anecdotes, but just as a sort of rebuttal to that girl who said that to you at the funeral, religion is for those who are asleep, and spirituality is for those who are awake.
Right. Now we're going to get some hate mail on that, I know, so bring it on. Religion has a dogmatic and unquestionable assembly of rules that need to be followed without question. Whereas spirituality invites you to reason it all, to question it all, to decide your own actions and assume the consequences.
Yeah, and I think this one is especially good. Religion threatens and terrifies.
Absolutely.
Spirituality, however, gives you inner peace. Religion speaks of sin and of fault, whereas spirituality encourages living in the present and not to feel remorse for that which is already past. Lift your spirit and learn from errors.
I was born a Christian, and I can tell you that is, they fear you. That's what They try to instill fear for you to believe. I mean, just think, if you don't do this or if you do that, you're going to go to hell. That's a fear tactic. Another one was religion represses humanity and returns us to a false paradigm. Spirituality, therefore, transcends it all and makes you true to yourself.
And yeah, just to get back to the fear thing really quick, I mean, it's so true. And this is why, I mean, especially when it's one thing to believe in this and get indoctrinated as an adult, but to teach this to children, I think is, and I don't think I'm being overly hyperbolic by saying that it's essentially a form of child abuse to promote these falsities, to tell a child, when you have no idea yourself, whether it's true or not, no evidence, that they're going to go to an eternal abyss of hellfire and brimstone for something as simple as, I don't know, taking the Lord's name in vain or not honoring thy mother or thy father. It's insanity. But, yeah, so another one is religion is instilled from childhood, as I was saying, like the soup you do not want to take. Whereas spirituality is the food that you're seeking, that satisfies you and is pleasant to the senses.
Yep. It's going to move a little bit farther down here because I'm sure people are just up in arms with our thing here. But religion is adoration. Spirituality, therefore, is meditation.
Very nice. Religion continues the teachings of a sacred book, whereas spirituality seeks the sacredness in all the books.
Yeah, well, religion dreams of glory and paradise. Spirituality makes you live in the here and the now.
And just to do a final one, religion believes in the eternal life, and this one's key, I think, whereas spirituality makes you conscious of all that is and ensures that you value the life that is right in front of your face, empirically. So yeah, you can find those on the internet. I think did you Google like religion versus spirituality or something like that?
Yeah, if you just Google that, I believe it's if it's on Google, it's the first or second thing that comes up.
Yeah, I should say start page it, which uses the Google Analytics but doesn't report your searches to the NSA. So
yeah, start page is good.
They won't flag you as a religious heretic or whatever in their Utah facility
or their Baltimore facility.
Yeah, but to get into it, you said you were raised as a Christian. I sort of was in a wishy-washy kind of way. I think that's really common now. I mean, it's still close to 90% of Americans who self-identify as Christians. I think perhaps a majority of that, it's sort of a generic kind of designation. They don't necessarily go to worship every week, if even once or twice a year. Not that that's required to be spiritual. I mean, you can be a devout Christian and never go to church, I'm sure, but essentially my journey with being a skeptic about religion, just to tackle the issue of religion in general, is I had a phase when I was a young kid where I wanted to get into it just because my dad acted like he had a great experience with it. I had a friend who was all about it, and I wanted to have that sort of euphoria, and I tried it for a while, and then the experience of going to church was like the sickest experience, one of the sickest experiences I've had. I mean, literally, I went to church with my friend who is kind of a religious conservative growing up, and literally I had a pastor or preacher or whatever the term is in Protestantism. He gave a sermon about angels coming down as an army, and I mean, essentially like the plot of that movie, like Legion or whatever with Paul Bettany, like coming down like 10,000 angels. There's a song, they literally sing a song like, he could have called 10,000 angels to kill you, and you should be thankful that he didn't send a bunch of angels. And this is the shit that they're preaching in the church, and I'm supposed to think that this is noble? It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And just to add to that too, I mean, it was sad to me because the majority of people in the pews are old people, just to be frank, and a lot of them show up just to essentially talk to the preacher. They'll stand up in the middle of the service or whatever and basically say I have terminal cancer or whatever. I mean, they're in a sad, sick way. They're going to church in their twilight years to beg God to spare them from death. I mean, is that faith? That to me is disgusting. I'm just gonna cut through the bullshit on this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and it's just this routine where I had an ex-girlfriend who was very religious, and she had to tiptoe around life because she was afraid of what God would do or what the church would believe if she did something like that. And my whole take on it is, everyone has a conscience, everyone knows right from wrong. You have the feeling of guilt. You have various feelings that dictate what's right and wrong for you in your life. I mean, and for her to tell me, I can't do this, or I can't eat that, or I can't drink, or I can't do this because I'm going to go to hell. I just couldn't fathom it. I mean, like, why live your life scared of the next, or why live your life preparing for the next when you have no idea what is next? I mean, and that's what religion, I think, religion does, is it, and there's some good aspects of it. It's not all bad. I mean, traditionally the religion came about as a control method to control society, but also to instill, societal norms and ways that humans should interact with each other, so that we're not just all out there like barbarians just killing each other and stuff like that. I can understand that, but it's become this political thing, this empire that just oppresses. It really does. And then people get so fed up. I mean, just get so tied up into it and into, the Bible, which the Bible has good lessons in it. Sure, if you read it and you take it out of context and you just look at the lessons, maybe, it's okay, but they take it true to their heart. And then, I mean, look at all these wars and all these, I can guarantee you that if you do any amount of research on the past, however many centuries you want to go back, most of the wars, most of the struggles have been geared around religion. I mean, it's just, I don't know. But
yeah, it's I mean, and when you mix especially religion with the might of the government, it becomes like a horrible, like unholy alliance, like a vicious, poisonous cocktail of dogma and superstition, and it's awful. And and we're winding down the show here, and there's a few things I wanted to hit on religion, and one of them was just my experience on casting off the dogma of not religion, because I was never particularly religious in any organized way, but just the belief in God, that idea. I was exposed. First of all, I'll put out the plug. Read Ayn Rand. I mean, she's amazing. She's like an intellectual superheroine. Yep. But she put out the idea that, first of all, well, and you talk about religion, and then there are a number of good things. Yeah, I mean, the Hebrew Bible says it's immoral to murder people. Yeah, that's pretty legit morally. And that's where religion is like a primitive form of philosophy. Mm-hmm. Now, we as humans, we need philosophy. It's vital. We need to study our way of life, what it means to be human, what it means to be moral. These are absolutes. If you're not doing this in your life, you're not really being a moral human. But religion was a primitive attempt at that, and unfortunately it still holds sway in the 21st century, which is kind of sad, even post-Enlightenment, centuries after the Enlightenment, when, ideally this would have been turned aside. And you look at the third world, and it holds such a sway still that people are butchering other people wholesale, and it's just insane. But I just wanted to make the case for atheism really quickly. I mean, I was exposed to the idea of Aristotle's laws of logic, one of which is that A equals A, which is it's sort of an abstract idea, but it's reality is what reality is. Now, we as humans have the faculties, our senses, we can perceive reality. We can't just make it up and expect it to go with what we want. People generally believe in God because they want there to be a God. They like the idea of there being a benevolent creator that rights wrongs. And obviously this God doesn't exist because there's so much terrible things that happen. And I know there's a faith-based rebuttal to that or whatever, that God allows free will but also is testing you, blah, blah, blah. But, and and I want to talk a little bit about agnosticism as well, because I do think it's not a clear. I hate to bash like agnosticism, but it's not a clear moral or intellectual stance. Just, you can be agnostic about anything. I mean, there's no evidence for God, so I'm just going to say be an atheist. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, you would. So anyways, we were talking about the Bible also earlier, and you were saying there was a you wanted to go into that about you know what I'm getting at here?
Well, I was talking about how sick of an experience going to church is, and I haven't read the whole Bible, I might never, but reading passages of the Bible, including in an academic setting, I mean, it's an awful piece of text in large part. I mean, it's terribly
very
primitive.
Scary. It's very
the death, dismemberment, rape, I mean, genocide, famine, often initiated by this supposedly benevolent God himself. And I'm just going to put it out there. I think God, as he's portrayed in the Hebrew Bible, is a dick. I think he's a dick. Like,
I just had to hear you say that. Sorry.
Send your hate mail to rogueagent614 at gmail.com. And I'm creeped out also, and I wanted to hit on this, by religious people and like some of the culture that springs up around their religion. Because I don't know if you remember, like, not too long ago there was these Left Behind books.
Yeah.
By like a couple of authors, and they had like shitty, like made for TV quality movies based on them and stuff. But it just, to me, it's this thing where like there's religious people who like fetishize and get off on the idea of the end of the world, and it's creepy.
Oh yeah, that's been around here for a while. I mean, we could see it every decade. The world's going to end by some means. 2001, Y2K was there. 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar. It's just whatever that they can wrap their hand around that makes any sense to them about how and when it's going to happen. They go with it.
Yeah, and I think that'll always be out there, that the end time stuff. But it almost seems like religious people want it to happen, you know, because that's what happens when you believe so strongly in this afterlife, which to me has always been weird. Because if we have this endless afterlife, like why do you give a shit about this? Like flash in the pan existence. Like, why does a comparatively like insanely small 50, 60, 80, maybe 2 years on Earth? I don't know how babies going to heaven works or whatever, but how does that determine your fate for the rest of eternity? I mean, my God, that's no pun intended, but it's crazy, and it doesn't make sense. And I just wanted to, on like maybe a final note, to hit on like atheism, because I think it tends to get a bad rap, and I think there are two schools of atheism in my opinion. There is what I would call the militant atheist or the nihilistic atheist, who comes to the decision that, well, there is no God, so we should just not care about morality, we should not care about life, woe is me. To me, this is like William Golding, who wrote the book The Lord of the Flies, which is a very nihilistic book, a good book, but incredibly nihilistic. He was an atheist. The other example would be Ayn Rand, who I would call like the optimistic, free-thinking atheist. I subscribe to this school, which is essentially that the fact that there is no God is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. I mean, there are no limits to what this life can be, and the fact that it is cut short and that we have mortality makes it all the more important and special. And I don't know if you want to augment that, or if you agree or disagree with any of those points.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you have a point there. You know, this is a very, very touchy subject, so I'm trying not to say much about it. I don't want to offend many people, but again, this is TrueRants, and this is kind of our premise here. So we do talk about anything and everything. So yeah, I mean, you have a point, and I would probably be in the second school there too, the more free, open-minded atheist. Believe point there, and but you know, it comes down to it, you know, we don't know, you know, so you know, just live your life. And I mean, I understand human nature, we need something to gravitate towards, something to grasp onto, but let's grasp onto ourselves. How about we have faith in us, and instead of trying to leave everything up to some imaginary force or some unworldly force. Let's say there even is a God. He's not here. He's not of this world. So how about we rely on ourselves and leave it at that?
Yeah, and he certainly isn't an anthropomorphic dude with a white beard. I mean, if anything, he would be like a cosmic, like, generative force, like some kind of like celestial vagina or something. I mean,
it would be something that we couldn't fathom anyways. So yeah,
if we start a band, by the way, I'm gonna call it Celestial Vagina.
Yes, let's do that.
But yeah,
I mean, singer though.
Totally. And we're talking about the record just on and I know I keep saying we're going to wrap this up, but there's so much with religion. And the record of religion, it's not just wars, it's human sacrifice, it's witch hunts, it's genocide, it's, I mean, my God, like, no pun intended, I keep saying my God, but it's insane what superstition leads to. And I think, yeah, we don't know on the one hand, but we're a smart species. We have the ability to ascertain reality. And that should be used, and that's our reasoning mind. I mean, it's an amazing tool. Like, I was blown away by the fact that there's more nerve endings and synapses in the human brain than there are stars in the galaxy. So even if you believe in God or you believe in evolution, which, by the way, is a scientific fact, it's in the fossil record, but you know, you can almost say that the human brain is more beautiful than the entire cosmos. We're it, man. It's something to celebrate, and that gets back to spirituality. Truth and reason and science are a form of spirituality.
Yep.
So that's pretty much my soapbox edition. I don't know if you want to add anything on a final note before we wrap this second episode up.
Yeah, hey, I would. We are running drastically low on time here. I think we're running over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say thanks for listening. If you did make it this long in the episode today, we thank you for tuning into the whole entire broadcast. And up next on our next episode, we're going to hit upon some issues involving these casinos that have been popping up across the country. I've got a interview of a guy who made it out pretty big at one of the casinos in Columbus, Ohio, and got that turned around upside down when he got home with his winnings and was robbed at gunpoint. So we're going to go into that and have a chat with that gentleman next show. And other than that, thanks for tuning in. I'm Roshan, and I'm out.
Awesome. And I'll do a final note here. You can definitely find us at TrueRants.podbean.com. And I'd also like to put out an additional plug for what I like to think of as a sister project to the podcast, which is something that is kind of right now just going to be my personal blog, but I'd like to grow it in time as a multi-contributor website. It's emancipage.com. That's EMANCIPAGE page.com. I think a lot of content there is going to be mostly written, is going to sync up with what we cover here verbally on the podcast. I'd love for you to check it out. Yeah, good night. And I would wish you good luck in the immortal words of Edward R. Murrow, but luck, my friends, is for losers. Farewell.